Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming on. We're running a little late. We're just sharing. We're both discombobulated from the summer. I can't figure out where we're supposed to be when. We're like, what?
Time zones. We got this. This is okay.
Okay, so Nicole Kinkley, is that right?
Keekley. You almost got it.
Keekley, still got it
Keekley.
wrong.
That's all right.
Keekley, Keek.
Keek.
That's just
Yeah,
not a
it's
word.
like, think of it phonetically.
Keek.
Keek.
It's never a word you say.
It isn't. Like
You
rhymes
make
with keek,
keek.
but doesn't look like it's a
We
little bit
actually met a
German.
long time ago in like the fertility women's health world, which
That's
I
so long
have
ago.
to just like fess up, Nikki. I think those were my blur years.
Yeah,
I had a
I do
young
have those too.
child.
Yep.
Yeah, had a young child, was in mold, running a clinic, starting a different business, and I do remember the name of your business.
Yeah.
That's about the only part of the interaction.
Yeah.
I remember.
Okay. I get it. No, I get
So-
it. I was telling someone the other day, how like with Odin, who's almost 8 now, with his first 4 years of him, like he didn't sleep. He wasn't unhappy. He just had we were mold parasites and just stress, right? Just the things that kind of come with parenting. But he didn't sleep for 4 years. And so neither did I. But those 4 years were the first 4 years in our second bricks and mortar space where like I walked in, I don't remember, like 6 months pregnant or something, signing a lease because that's always a good plan, like, but then you just don't know. I'm planning for I'm a healthy mom, planning for this healthy pregnancy, and then pregnancy goes great, postpartum goes okay, and then we don't sleep for 4 years. I remember writing checks for staff and taking 3 hours every night to get him to fall asleep, where he would just be conk for 20 minutes and then he'd be up again. It was miserable. So I get it. There are things I literally don't remember about that time because it was just survival. So we all have those totally blurry years for sure.
Yeah. You're just kind of making it through the day the best you can.
Yeah.
So I think you and I are doing a little bit, maybe have made a similar shift in our journeys because we were both doing women's health and fertility. I think you're still doing that, but now we're both doing more like detox, functional medicine. You are the muscle testing expert. I want to ask more about that, which I'm just kind of starting to learn more about. So I think there's so much you do that's really fascinating and interesting and can provide our viewers with some potential new tools and new ways to look at things. I've seen you test, pets on Instagram and smoke, which is amazing. There's all this potential. So I'm just kind of giving people a little background, but maybe share just a bit about your journey, like why you started into natural medicine, how it evolved, what you're doing now.
Gosh, I think much like most of us, the start into a more holistic way of living but because my mom got sick. My mom got sick when I'm literally turning on my Healy because I can sit here and have it on. She got sick when I was 16, so she was 36, and I was the oldest of 4 kids, and just really, I was kind of a mother hen already. It was just like my nature, and so then I just doubled that, tripled that when she was unavailable for that time frame. But it didn't take me long to realize that I was sick. I don't think I knew that I was like a sick kid until I was doubled over literally. And, in some ways sort of surprised I even graduated from high school, considering the amount of time I, missed class, supporting my mom's health, supporting my own health after 9 years being a gymnast, getting removed from the team because what point is it to sit on the bench when, that's all I was doing because I couldn't practice because I couldn't stand up straight. Turns out I had an ulcer. Who knew? Right. So I started eating differently. I started, and mostly when I say eating differently, it's not like when I was 16, I was, making monumental choices, but I had a nanny family I worked for. And for instance, they shopped at the co-op and at kind of a high-end grocery store. And that wasn't what we knew or did or could afford. Right. So I wondered why I felt better when I ate at their house. Looking back on that now, I'm like, gosh, that was probably like a quality conversation. You know, every parent does what they know to do and can at the time. So as I look back over the years at these kind of pivotal moments of like, okay, at 16, I got that ulcer, and that turned into a year and a half of chronic subacute appendicitis. And I look back at that now, and I literally do like test back to that. It's parasites, just schistosomiasis, mold. Like it just was all right there. 14 UTIs in 1 year when I was 23, like LEAP procedure at the same time. They thought I had endometriosis. They also thought I had that at 18, didn't. 5 miscarriages. You know, and that's how, when you and I met, I was ultimately I was a doula for 20 years and a childbirth educator. And I just loved, I was like raising babies at 9. You know, I just was like, it just was easy for me, and parents didn't frazzle me and babies didn't frazzle me. So it just was like a really, really easy space for me to be in and pursue as I put my 4-year degree to the side. You know, after a year and a half, it was like, I need a break. And I just started listening, like, what makes sense right now? I'm so sick of life. I needed a big, like, fat life break. So nurturing and listening and leaning in and following that compassion for people in their spaces and places. Then I just, you know, became nationally certified as a neuromuscular massage therapist at 20, and then became a birth doula, and then added, you know, 2 different methods of training for craniosacral into, and I just kept going. And it was ultimately those doula moms and babies that were what the entire foundation of my practice as it is now started with those families. Because as you know, going, like, mothering, it's a very lonely, isolating place. Even though we're surrounded by mothers, it's a very odd dynamic. And I remember thinking, like, they come to me because I'm the closest to them, and I'm not their mom and their sister or their neighbor or their best friend. I have a very non-biased, like, how can I just love on you and support you with the resources you need right now? Like, go take a nap, I'll hold your baby, whatever it is. Or here's just some food, like, let me draw you a sitz bath. And it was honestly, their phone calls and their emails that had me realize if I don't know the answer, and there are many things I don't know the answer to, and I'm the first one to say that, I know people who do. And I even say with confidence now, I know how to think with getting there. It doesn't mean I'm the answer, or I'm going to, like, have the answer or can give you the answer, but like that, those connections, though. I'm also a warm connector. So it's like, how can I take you and connect you with this resource? Sometimes a product, sometimes a service, mostly a human, right? Like, who's that next human on your path? And I actually had, like, the paper Rolodex, I remember, on my desk, and it was so plump full because I just became the go-to. So it was really important to me to connect with other providers and practitioners who did things differently than I did, because those questions came, like, at the time, right? I don't know what to do with your gout. Like, maybe just don't eat sugar. That was the best I could do at 21. But I knew a great, you know, acupuncturist. I knew several chiropractors. I was already very well networked in my area. So, you know, my own health and then the health of those around me, that just, this causes us to move forward. You know, the one thing I say when I teach practitioners is, like, keep in mind who you're learning this for. I'm very clear that even though I'm that evergreen learner, I'm, like, chronically in some kind of program because I dig it. Once I'm in it, I'm like, oh, this isn't even about me. What the heck was I thinking? This is immediately tomorrow that shows up in my practice, right? Or that request comes and you're like, no way, I wouldn't have known this, or it would have taken me a minute to find that right connection or right person to get you where you need to be, you know, for the answer to your question. So it's never about us, never. It's just, it's the pull, right? It's the, like, well, that sounds interesting. And we do that. And then we've got, like, just such an incredible way to serve. And that being said, there's so much possibility for the pickle that people are in with their health. And there are so many of us in terms of practitioners and providers. And just because we have, 9 or 11 or 17 or 21, professional certifications or fancy abbreviations behind our names, or whatever the case may be, it's more important to me that people have that great energetic connection. So that's what I've learned about my own health, right? Like my own health leading me down this path. It's been like I utilized, this service for a while. And even though it was acupuncture, I then shifted that practitioner at a certain point 7 years later because I needed to shift that energy or that what I was receiving. And I think that's the same with the people that we work with, right?
Yeah, you said so many important things there. I'll try to reflect back on the ones I can remember. I think as well, this isn't necessarily an interview for practitioners, but I think that Nikki and I both have a lot of experience in a lot of realms. And something I see when I go to like events and trainings is sometimes people are afraid to like hang the shingle and just start and not instead of like getting more and more training. But you get so much experience from just working with people, and you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to really show up with like integrity. And often, like you said, something you just learned will come into play. Or you say, hey, here's something interesting I've been reading about. Maybe you can try this. So yeah, it's that energetic exchange. And really the client does, they want to get better, yes, but like you showing up and being intimately involved in their journey with, your sincerity is often really what we want. We want that human connection and support. So if you happen upon this video, I just encourage you to like, just go start putting it out there with whatever skill sets you have, because you will keep learning more throughout your lifetime if you're a learner type like Nikki. So yeah, just get out there. You were so young when you started all this. And another important thing I think you said is like you're a natural nurturer, you're a natural like family person, but you also had to learn at a young age like you can't operate when your body isn't operating. And you weren't going to operate well on the standard American diet and this and that. So I love that like from a young age you also turn to like nurture yourself. That's so great.
I've been telling people lately, the sooner. So I knew that just the intuitive piece was there very early for me. And some of the, what people can categorize as like very strange experiences were happening to me early on in life. And when I'm teaching now, one of the things when I'm talking to people about like your inner knowing, because that's really what leads us, right? It's led us down this path. It's led people to look for practitioners like us and others we know, is what sets us apart. And how are we utilizing our intuition in the work that we do, both just guiding our own lives and then of course in that work. And I have two very consistent experiences with how information comes to me. And I kind of giggle when I say it because it sounds just, pretty off the wall. And I obviously learn in a lot of other ways, but I get information as kind of like pictures, and they come to me from over here and they come through my right ear. And then I will see words across my forehead. So, some people might say like, oh, I hear a whisper, or I just like a little chirp chirp from my shoulder, or, I might even sort of lightly, say things like that. But as I was a kid, I recognize how long I've resisted accepting that about myself. And honestly, the last 6 months have been like, oh, so that whole self-love and acceptance thing. Yeah, I don't have that. And recognizing that I consciously wasn't allowing that for myself, and then starting to lean into that had to be an actual practice, because it wasn't just like, oh, I love and accept myself, and it was just there the next day. part of that self-love and self-acceptance was little knowing that there were things I was ignoring about myself and resisting about myself or didn't like about myself, that I had to just start going like, well, I guess that's you. So just here we go. Right. And so it's funny to me because I had this whole conversation around like, okay, but I'm so strange. Like, that is so weird. I mean, who does that happen to? That is bizarre and la, 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 la. But it'll happen inside of conversation. Sometimes it happens a lot, obviously, during client interactions. The minute I made that okay for myself, it's like the information is just there and I don't notice it as like being bombed with information. So it was very loud and noisy simply because I was over here like, no, just let me be over
you weren't
here.
listening and
I'm
accepting
listening,
it. Wow. Yeah.
Right. And so the minute I accepted that, it all just is sort of very seamless and it sort of lands. And sometimes there's a little giggle and my clients are like, what's that about? And I was like, well, let me just share. Can I share a little something? And so it's made my life, it's like brought so much more joy. It's made things so much lighter, so much more fun. And then it's allowed me to see like back to childhood. Really, I was resisting my very existence, which is so heartbreaking for me to really look at, and challenging still, because I realize it's kind of like a choice every day just to keep reminding myself to choose myself and to choose that self-love and acceptance. And when I'm present to it, oh my gosh, everything just clicks. Everything just clicks. And it's like that zone of genius, that like phrase that gets used, right? But because I'm like fully present, I've just never before experienced how I've experienced my being for myself in the last 6 months. And then how I get to share that. Because then it's like a true awareness of, wow, like this is who I am. This is what I'm good at. This is, wow. Like I didn't see that. The gifts of how we serve our families, ourselves, our communities, our clients. I'm just in such a like,
yeah.
mode.
And
It's
I would
crazy.
imagine that people love it because they are also perhaps denying that part of themselves or like that magical part of themselves, that intuition. So when you show up with it, like your self-acceptance and intuition, they're probably like, this is so cool, right? I would imagine. Is that your experience?
I think so. I mean, I think watching people go like, all right, well, if she's going to admit to the weird things, like maybe I can too. Cause we all have those experiences, right? Of like this thing we do, or this thing we were taught, or just simply our upbringings are very different, across the board. We've got some similarities, but we each have just like the way our families functioned or didn't, the way our relationships worked or didn't, how we, made communication or just rode with it or sat inside the lack of, all of those things that have the ability to shift who we are, but who like, it's like a way of looking at our beingness and an honest look at, does that beingness of who we were serve who we are now? And then the conscious choice of, I can stand in that or I can stand here. Where do I function best out of? Because it's a trip, right? You're like, it's really easy to fall into
Your old
the
way.
old stuff, like the ignorance is bliss or whatever, people want to call it.
Yeah. So I think what you said earlier is you actually muscle tested yourself for what the symptoms you experienced in the past. Is that right?
I have. Yeah, I've played with that a lot.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me because I think, I mean, it's probably most relevant to people listening to do in the present. But yeah, like you, I had an ulcer at a very young age. At first, I didn't know anything about this kind of medicine. So let's talk a bit more about muscle testing. I met you in muscle testing. Met you officially at a muscle testing webinar.
Yeah.
Which talk about like why we, I have an online practice and I go to a muscle testing training, but I just felt called to do it. and I'm still like being called, even though I'm actually switching my career in a totally different direction. But like, for instance, I was just visiting a friend who was actually ended up in the ER the day we got there, was going through all these things. And I was just like, I feel like even if I don't 100% use this professionally, it's just so nice to have tools that like can help support people, whether it's just like your friends and family or your pets, or like, that. So even though I don't quite know what I'm doing with it, I'm just still kind of taking the pace that following the calling, because I think it's just such an incredible tool. After coming from an acupuncturist who kind of reads the body in a very certain way,
Right.
and then to functional medicine, which can be a lot of testing, which has lots of pros, but also some cons, and like the cost and like the dead ends and stuff like that. I'm just so excited about muscle testing for, complex illness, chronic illness. So maybe if people haven't heard about it, like, can you tell us kind of how it works, how you use it, that type of thing?
Muscle testing itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, very general and sort of brief description is it's just a non-invasive way of analyzing the body systems for what can either bring it to a place of strength or, brings weakness or illness, sickness, however you want to look at that. And when we say things like weak and strong, it's not so much like how strong is your bicep, weak and strong. It's a response, right? It's a reflex response. And non-invasive because there's no blood work, right? You don't have to have your blood drawn. If you're in person, most people learn with the arm, so the lock and the unlock of the arm when they're in person. But there are several methods of muscle testing that include hand modes. So I use one because I don't know if I told you this or not, but last November I closed my bricks and mortar practice and I've been fully virtual ever since. So
Oh, no, I don't think I knew that. That's
yeah,
awesome.
we were 75% virtual at that point, and it was like, what am I doing? let's make this really easy and let me work from home every day and have more time with my family and more time for self-care and kind of just regulate a bit more. And that's been a phenomenal experience. Inside of a virtual testing practice, there are all of these different hand modes and ways of self-testing. So some people use something called the sway test, right? Where they'll hold their, should I eat this banana, right? And then they get grounded and look to see, is their body going to sway forward, which would indicate, yeah, that's not a problem for you. Or does my body start to sway backwards? Like, hey, yeah, girl, put that coffee down. That's not working for you, right? So when people start talking about self-testing, that sway test a lot of times is what they're talking about. I use a muscle. So I just showed you, like, there's a lock and an unlock that people learn with, but I use a finger. So this becomes my arm, and then my middle finger applies pressure. So you've got a lock muscle or an unlock muscle.
Okay, so it's like your finger is a little arm.
Yeah, it's a little lever, just like your arm is a lever. Yeah. But I've learned a bunch of different ways, right? Some people use this ring lock method. Let's see, like that, lock, unlock, or lock, unlock. That's another way of doing it. And I call it a snap. So lock, unlock, lock, unlock. That's very easy to do. But on this hand, I don't snap very well. So like I have no coordination and I can't do it on my left. There's like a finger rub, there's the flick. You can actually muscle test with your tongue. Like there are a lot of different ways that you can use muscle testing. And so I teach all of those in our method of intentional inquiry, which is kind of like a 2-day, more advanced, beyond just a basic, 1-day muscle testing that we teach. But people like it because it's quick and it's like, I wonder really quick, like how well are you handling that coffee? Or you walk around with that phone in your chest pocket right next to your heart. If I put some pressure on your heart and I apply pressure to your lock muscle, look at that. You go weak in your heart. Let's take your phone off of your body. Now check your lock muscle, strong here. Apply a hand to the heart and check that lock muscle, strong here. Like it's like an immediate, like give and take of information. So you can truly ask anything and get an answer with muscle testing. And I think muscle testing can be made both way too simple and way too complex. And that is a question that I get all the time. Well, what if, and how come? And then I did, and like people just get lost inside of what they're doing. And the reason they get lost is because they lose track of what they're asking. So when people are muscle testing with, I don't even know if I have any vials with me, with a test kit of vials that might be pathogens, toxins, emotions, what else? Like suddenly I'm drawing a blank. And anything, right? Food, you name it. Anything environmentally, molds and stuff like that. You can use supplements. Like you can use those things to see, well, what keeps that nervous system strong, and what are the things that bring it weakness. So a lot of times I find people are just over supplemented, as that's one problem. And so they're like, why am I so tired? And I just don't have any energy. And or they're just trying to pound in all these nutritionals when really they're so toxic that the amount of like how much you're going to take and try to constantly run this hamster wheel chasing these toxicity levels without actually speaking right to the toxins and handling those, and then working on building up the body nutritionally afterwards. Like, that's
something I learned from Cellcore that I hadn't really given a lot of thought to. Like, I think there's some nuance to that whole combo, but
for sure.
And I just want to like acknowledge, I think one thing that can be so cool about muscle testing, although people who just starting out can be freaking good at it, but I think they can be real good. But I think it's pretty cool when someone's like a seasoned practitioner like you, and you've seen a lot of things, you've experienced a lot of things, you've gotten like intuition downloads on different things, and then you're combining it with muscle testing. I think it's just so cool, and just like becomes even more powerful because you have studied with different supplement companies and seen different scenarios and how long it takes to heal and order of detox, and probably you've made some errors along the way on going fast or whatever. So I think it's just such an incredible tool. What else was I going to ask? So I wondered, when you're teaching people, are you teaching your clients how to ask these questions, or practitioners, or a mix?
Mostly practitioners, but I'll say I was actually recording a video this morning about just our basic muscle testing course. And I would say, I think I started teaching basic muscle testing in 2018. And right off the bat, half of the room would be practitioners, and the other half of the room would be moms. Majority of them practitioners and moms, my clients. So that was also really fun. It was like people right under my fingertips, literally under my fingertips, are wanting to learn, not like just from me, but are wanting to learn muscle testing. And I just happen to be that right next, low-hanging fruit, right? Like right there, they know where we are, they know how to find us, and they're interested in that information. And moms, they just want to be able to discern, like, is this a virus, we're dealing with here, or is this truly what happens every time they eat dairy or whatever? Because for a mom, that is so stinking empowering. That might save her a trip to the doctor's office, maybe an unnecessary trip, right? It gives her something to work with. And if she's, knowledgeable enough to be able to go into Whole Foods or their natural foods co-op, or, their acupuncturist, right? Like their chiropractor, to say, here's what I think is going on with my kiddo. Can you now help direct us to that next place? Because I could kind of jump on my soapbox about this. I think.
Go ahead.
I kind of think, society sets up our mothers to be anything but critical thinkers in regards to the health of our families. Because we have this, allopathic way of doing things, and those are the people we listen to. They don't necessarily guide us. They just tell us what they need to do, and we go home and we do the thing, and it either works or it doesn't work. And mostly doesn't work. If it does, it's for a little while. That's is kind of like the gist of it. So
Yeah.
we have this beautiful system in place called allopathic medicine for emergencies. And we need that. We need that go-to.
Yeah.
We need that, like, I don't have another option. Like, or the antibiotic is the only option here because of how far gone this thing is, or whatever it is, or we're a catastrophic accident, right? You know, my kid broke her arm on our trampoline, like, so that we weren't going to handle that at home. You know, like we need that medicine. However, I think it's really diminishing when the mother brings the child into the provider and says, I really think, doctor, nurse practitioner, I really think, I just wonder if you would check. And why do mothers have to plead for that test, that particular thing to
And
check?
be minimized
And being minimized or flat
yeah.
out ignored, left feeling completely unsupported. That's wrongdoing. Like, that's malpractice, right? Listen to that mom. Give her support and resources. But what happens is, I mean, I don't know, right? I'm not in the room. I get the reports, right? So I get the, like, here's what happened, here's what they said, here's what they did. And then what I hear is they go home and sort of go like, well, yeah, they're probably right. Like, I don't really know what's going on with my kid. And then they actually start taking on that thinking where it's like, no. Like, you more than anyone know what's going on with your kid. You might not know why, but you see the what. You see what's happening right in front of you, and you could write a book on it. You just might not know or understand that that's a toxicity response, or that that's a bug that's gone pathogenic, or that is a, wacky response to food, but because of blah, 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 blah. So we have a really, really unique opportunity to take the time, the energy to educate and uplift and empower the families we work with information. Muscle testing can be one of those things. Sometimes these families pick it up. They're like, I don't really know what he's doing, but I was sort of trying that arm thing. Remember, you used to do that in the office with us and used to push on the arm. I was doing that and it was so cool. Turns out, like, my 7-year-old doesn't do well with apples. And I never believed him when he said he had a stomach ache and it left his teeth feeling like gritty and like metal, but he unlocks every time he has an apple. Okay, don't give him apples, right? Give him something else instead that makes him feel good, and then he doesn't complain to you. You don't have to deal with that, right? So it can be little things like that that are sort of fun to play with at home. And it can be like, why does my kid have a fever? We can, in a really educated and empowered way, start to really effectively manage the health and well-being of our people at home, or while reaching out to our village of practitioners who care for the health of our families, in a way that leaves us supported and guides us to, well, you might try this, you might consider this, you might change this lifestyle, you might also consider reaching out to this practitioner because I can see we may need somebody else on the team, and allow her to, like, handpick and procure that village of who is going to care for their family based upon what it is that she knows and believes innately they need. I just cannot say enough about putting tools in her toolbox. It's worth its weight in gold if we can spend our time doing that. Because I can tell you it's not coming from anyone else.
Yeah.
Right. So that critical thinking, if we can make it right and make it okay that she connects her mama intuition with what she knows, little or a lot, to go like, I think this is the thing. I'm pretty sure my 2-year-old swallowed a penny. Not choking on it. I am pretty sure. Why we don't take action on those things is beyond me.
Yeah, and if you look at, like, learn something about the history of medicine in America, we did have more of that learning, and then it was kind of minimized when, what's the doctors' organization called? at the FDA. Well, maybe partly the FDA, but there's some other doctor organization.
Are you talking about? What about organization? The other day we were having a good conversation. We were like, and who? Who brought that conversation to
I
life?
mean, I don't want to like get into a blame game, but like just like we did historically have to have this kind of medicine because we lived in like a very rural way.
We lived in the woods.
Yeah, so we learned about
your first
plants.
neighbor was 9 miles apart by buggy and cart, right?
So it's like so sad that we have to, defend ourselves as like being like hippie wackadoodle when really like knowing this stuff is like really
Makes
how
us
we should
educated.
live. Yeah, and if your kid has a stomach ache or a fever on a weekend and you can't get in touch with your practitioner and like, like going to the urgent care is like this whole thing. Like, yeah, if you have to end up going to the urgent care, it's great that it's there. But if you can have some tools that you know about homeopathy or herbs or muscle testing at home, it's just very empowering. So that's why I said, like, I'm not totally sure what I'm going to do with muscle testing professionally. But even if I just use it for my own little network,
right.
I'm very thankful for that I have that to offer. Because even though I know a lot about functional medicine, blah, 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 like there's can be a lot more power in like just downloading like this is from this, like let's try this and be more specific rather than trying like everything under the sun or doing nothing. So yeah, I think it's so awesome. So I kind of promised in some of the previews that we talk about weird stuff. We probably already are talking about weird stuff in a sense, but like I just wanted to do some like fun examples about you talked about the apple, right? And I think until I got more familiar with Cellcore, it really got up until Cellcore, I didn't really realize, like, say you're testing for an apple, right? It really could be the pesticide on that apple.
For sure.
So I think that is a big one that people don't know about, right? They think, well, I'm sensitive to food. Well, are you sensitive to food or what's on the food? Are you sensitive to a certain environment? And why? So yeah, I wondered if you could just share, and I wonder if you see trends too. I just interviewed someone last week and she was like, the parasites are like taking over. She's like, that's the trend I see.
Speaking my love language, my tips, my trends and patterns videos.
Yes, like I've seen you do a few of them, and I love it because it makes us realize like it's not just us too, right? It's like I want to learn more about what they're doing in Florida with like the mosquitoes and the spray. It's like things are happening to our communities. So there are trends and you are the best person to share them. So
the other night, my husband I was teaching here in Minneapolis over the weekend for Cellcore, and I just talked all about Lyme and co-infections, and I, go home and I came out while I was brushing my teeth, and my husband was watching the news, and it was like, up next, the resurgence of the Lone Star tick. And I was sort of like, eye roll, continued to brush my teeth. And then I was kind of like, you know what? I'm a little curious to just see what they're going to say. And I nudged my husband. I was like, I just taught about this today. Like, let's see what they're going to tell,
Did you already know that type of tick was like on the research? Or
I don't know what they mean by like research. That's what I was just like, what are they talking about? What's the problem here? And the thing that captured me is they started talking about the allergy to red meat. So that was like their little like, what's the word?
Tell kind of thing, like,
well, they're like, up next, their headline, their teaser, that's what it was. It was like the resurgence of the Lone Star tick, and then the alpha gal, allergy to red meat. And I was like, oh, that was actually me a couple of years ago. I'm curious. Brushed my teeth, spit, came back in, listened to it, and it was so funny to me because the person that the reporter was interviewing looked like she was 17. I mean, so of course now I'm just reading the riot. I'm just having a hoot with this because she was like, well, we're not so sure if it's a resurgence. We just know that the tick population is going to be so much worse this summer. And I'm like, yes, because you're releasing them into like, have you read the book Bitten by Kristen Newby? Everybody needs to read that book. It's like
I haven't read that book. Okay.
Biological warfare is what it is. And that's what's happening. I can't even, I'll get like too fired up to be talking for the next. Anyway, so it chapped my hide, right? Because I was like, misinformation. They said like 9 things and none of them are truth. So that's the problem, right? We are not being educated with truth. We're being educated from this, like, like maybe they're not going to, I don't know. It just was wonky. So
and probably the solution, I'm guessing they would say, is spray yourself, spray your yard, let the community spray us, right?
Right.
Which
Like,
is
be
probably
sure to grab that tick and send it in for testing, which I was like, giggle, cluck, cluck, like that does whatever. It's too, and then wait, it was like, and then if you have a tick, right, and then they put up this picture of like how to take the tick out, and they're squeezing the shit out of the tick, and
squirting all over you.
And then it's like a picture of soap and water on the arm, and then they're like, and then you just wait, right? Like there's 800 things you could do instead of just wait. So are we truly in like a preventive, let's help each other conversation here, or just like let's create easy, quiet ways to kill people off?
If it's on like the evening news, it's definitely gonna be.
Yeah, it grabbed me. But all to say, it is fascinating the things that we can test, and kind of going back to what you were saying about the apple, a really good example to bring to light of what it is that people aren't thinking about is, let's just say you've got a gluten intolerant family, or sensitive, even just gluten sensitive. And for the most part, they'll make choices like when they go out to eat, they're mindfully not choosing gluten containing foods. Or perhaps they don't do dairy, but they allow mozzarella on the Friday night pizza kind of thing, right? So they go out for their Friday night pizza, they come back home, and, within a few hours or the middle of the night or the next morning, like someone's either throwing up or moaning and groaning with pain or a stomach ache or a headache or something like that. What we do automatically is say, oh, the pizza was bad. I knew it. I knew that wasn't a
that restaurant is like dirty or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Like there must, but what they go to is food. Like, oh, is that pizza? Like I swear that didn't taste like a gluten-free crust, and we ordered a gluten-free crust. Like, so there's tearing apart the pizza, which maybe it was, right? Maybe it was the pizza, but also maybe it was the person who made the salad who didn't wash their hands thoroughly, who passed on a pathogen. Maybe it was that pizza restaurant is in a building with mold.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the fact that the person who had the headache had a really intense conversation with their boss that they haven't had time to process out and share with the rest of their family yet. Or maybe it was, someone got served. We go to the thing that we automatically had put in our mouth, usually is what we go to. We don't think about the company we keep. We don't think about the places we just visited, like the buildings we were in. We don't think about the air we just breathed. We don't think about there's a lot of these memes right now on social media about how dirty the ice cube makers are in the right at like restaurants and whatnot. Yeah. And so we don't think about that. We just we take the cup and we drink it at the restaurant. Maybe people are only doing water bottles with no ice anymore because of some of the things they're seeing. But what I'm saying is, we don't look at the big picture. We are like, it's that thing, it's that one thing, and it's only that thing, but we don't really know. We have an intuition, we have a gut sense about it, which does say something. I'm not negating that, but we don't take into consideration the bigger picture. I had this sweet little guy, what is he, 5, 6 years old, and he would barf every Tuesday night, and they called it like cyclical vomiting syndrome. And I'm like, that's actually a thing. It's actually like a thing that they call. That blows my mind too, that they're like, this happens enough to know we have a name for it in Western medicine. It's called cyclical vomiting syndrome. And I'm like, how about we just find out why they're barfing and then they won't do that anymore? That seems like a really logical way to go about it.
But it is curious, why is it on Tuesdays? What happens?
So what we discovered is that mom thought it was mold in that restaurant. She said, we're a super mold sensitive family. We've this has like happened before, da 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 da. And but mold was like really being handled nicely and wasn't
Like
wasn't going
testing,
up.
you
Yeah,
wanna
with
see.
muscle testing.
Okay.
And so, and I'm like, I'm quite confident with my muscle testing. And but like, herbicides would peak up and down and pesticides would peak up and down. And then somehow I was like, all right, what happens before you go to the restaurant? Like, what do you do after the restaurant? Like, I just started to go like, why is it on Tuesday nights? Because I hadn't really put that together. It was just like, oh, he throws up kind of during the week. But it was like, no, it's like every Tuesday night. It was like after soccer. So they'd just been on the soccer field. What are those soccer fields sprayed with?
Everything.
Yeah. Then it made sense to me, like then I would go back through the notes and I was like, there it is. There's the glyphosate. Like it goes up and down, up. So he's breathing it, but we don't think about it unless we like can see that the air is bad or we can literally smell something super bad. But then we kind of just take it with a grain of salt, like, oh, that was just for a minute and then the air got better. But that's what I mean. Like, think about the news and the movies that we're exposed to. Think about the content that our kids are being exposed to on social media. Think about the lyrics in today's music, just the conversations that we're present to, how kids sponge up everything that we bring home as adults. These are all stressors that drive our nervous system's ability to regulate and our immune system's ability to respond appropriately. And there are trends and patterns, which is, I would say, maybe every 10 days to 2 weeks or something, I pop on with them because it's interesting what I'm seeing right now. It's been a month of filtering in, but an intense 2 weeks of high spike proteins. The shots that people have received in the past 3 years are like coming in heavily with high levels of inflammation, specifically to mucous membranes, which I think is fascinating, and looking like other things. It's looking like fungal rashes is what a lot of people are saying. Like, I have this rash, or I have this yeast infection, or I have this thing, and my doctor says it's, blah, blah, blah fungus, or, I have this toe fungus, I have this blah, blah, blah. And that's not at all what it's testing like. So when I see, like high nematodes, these roundworms, high spike proteins, high inflammatory response, high need for lymphatic drainage, and then these shots all come in, it's like, well, there you go. And high industrial environmental chemicals. It's like this kind of post COVID. And I don't understand why, other than like, it's time to start. If, we've been seeing the damage all along that these shots have brought on. And just kind of reminds me of like those first Sherry Tenpenny interviews after the shots started being administered. Like, watch what happens here in the next 1 to 3 years, in the next 3 to 5 years. Watch and see. I'm like, oh, it's happening now. Now it's happening. Now we're seeing this.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, if you have a fungal infection, you'd be like, "Oh, I must have got it at the gym," or I must have got it at the nail salon," because your brain can only think about what it knows.
That's what I mean, like what it just did, the restaurant you were just at.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I might have to likely research more on the spike protein thing and everything. So one thing I was sharing, like how to deduce, because we all can get kind of dumb about our own symptoms. And I did a little IG about like, I get dumb too, and I have to stop and like get more rational.
Sure. Totally.
So when I've been traveling lately, I've come home really sick. So of course, I think it's the traveling. So I've been trying to modify that. And then I was like, okay, what's just symptom kind of local care I could do? And then it kind of hit me. What else happens when I come home? I come back to Phoenix air quality.
Yeah.
And that, there may be other factors like you're talking about the spike proteins and stuff, but like I just didn't even think about, okay, what also happens when I come home? Because my home itself is quite, as clean and, non-toxic as it can be. But the air here is a struggle for me. So I think partly I come back to this air, and it just kind of like you said with the soccer field, like it just hadn't really occurred to me. And and just if the more the more you can focus,
right?
How you treat it and get better sooner or get better at all. Some people just aren't getting better at all. And it's really sad, and it's tough when you see it with kids. And I love that, you work well with kids. because it's so frustrating to as a parent to see
Yeah.
that. Well, I'm gonna kind of wrap up and have you share like how people could potentially work with you or train with you. Are you only on like a subscription kind of service right now, or like how does your team see clients?
So I see clients, I have up until very, very recently, just a 1-year membership was what we've been doing that for a couple of years, and that's worked really, really well. And I've done that for many reasons. One, primarily being the kinds of cases we were seeing cannot be
Sure.
handled in like a 12 visit program and or even like an 18 visit program, because they'll float that out as long as they want to, which means that takes them much longer to get better. So I wanted a year, I wanted time, I didn't want to have to push, right? I'm not a push a detox person. I also work with so many kids that, again, even though they tend to get better before we do, kids are just in everything. Right? They're
Yeah.
like,
Right.
so, and the phases, I always say, people probably are just bored of me hearing it or saying it, but like phases and seasons and changes and transitions, when you work with someone for a time like that, you can start to hear things like, oh, last April, this is how I felt. And wow, this is how I feel this April. And last summer, I da 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 da. So you can start to really see the impact, and they hear it in themselves when they talk about it. So just recently, with the opening up of we just launched a practitioner mentorship group. We opted to add like a 6-month membership
Got it.
option as well. And then we also, I don't think these two things are on our site yet. In fact, I'm pretty sure they're not. Also kind of like a 1-hour work with me option. And we put that in there because, I've had some clients for 13 years and I've had some clients for, 3 years, and some who've just started in the last year. But there's this kind of gray area of people who've been around for a long time who do really well on their own and manage and have followed recommendations, though once or twice a year are just kind of like want a little kind of tweak, fine tune. And I don't want to do that in 15 minutes when I haven't seen you in 6 months. That just, I'm not going to
Just
get
to
to the
catch up.
heart. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we've brought that on as an opportunity to really, for me to be able to provide whatever I feel needs to happen inside of that time. We can do Psych K, we can do MBSR, we can do these emotional clearings as needed. We can work with the Healy for a longer period of time in an hour. We've got time to really like get deeper. And so I'm excited about that option too. So, people could always, myhealthybeginning.com is our site. We have a link for education. So if you're looking for more practitioner mentorship, or you're looking for the muscle testing workshops, both what we teach and both what I offer for Cellcore. And then you could always just email our team, info@myhealthybeginning.com. If you're like, I think there's a thing and I don't know where to find it, you can DM us on Instagram. I have a personal handle on Instagram as well, so we monitor both of those. It's really fun to interact with people online. It is just nice to like have a quick question, and I do the same thing, right? Question is great. Ask a question, right? We can't do a full consult over DM, but we can do our best to answer a quick question. And if I can't get to what they're looking at, then I just say, like, let's do a discovery call. It's a complimentary 15 minutes where mostly I just want to get to know you and your energy and what's going on, and what you've done that has or hasn't worked, and what caused you to reach out to us. Do I think we can help you? Right? Gives it opportunity to, and then we also use that Cellcore assessment form for the discovery call,
Oh,
which I
cool.
love.
Cool.
It's so great. If you're not using that, I would highly recommend bringing that into your practice. It's so snazzy.
Yeah, I'm not using that. So
Yeah, it's a good one.
yeah, and I just want to just kind of point out, like, often we feel like so alone and like, where are my resources as we go through
Mm-hmm.
this journey? But the resources are really out there, right? And like,
Yeah.
and Nicole is like here holding space for you, has options for you. Like, you've just got to like open up to it and be curious, and build like the community of practitioners that does light you up and work for you. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
hear sometimes people getting caught in like it's so unfair that like allopathic medicine doesn't, listen to me and everything. It's like, well, let's just get over that. That's
Yeah.
how it is. Like, go find what speaks to you. Like, let's not just stay in that mentality. Go learn new tools as a practitioner if that speaks to you. Like, just grow. And this is a great way to do it. So, Nichi, I love this like deep conversation we just like dove right into. I love that so much. Like, I'm just so glad that like we connected in real life, and like, yeah, where I could just tell we're like kindred spirits. So, and a lot of what we talked about with intuition and all that, it's like, this is the real healing, right? It's not only just removing chemical, like that's important, but this is another blind spot I see is like our healing our hearts, like, creating community. This is also healing very much. So you can't just like get tunnel vision about detox. You have to like, where are the other areas of my life that need healing, that I need to support myself? And I think for you and I both, like it's, accepting ourselves, accepting our gifts, sharing them with the world, like that's big stuff. And that'll make you feel real good.
Right.
Right? It's amazing. Like when you're living your truth, that's so powerful, so I hope that like if you stayed this long, thank you, you're probably into this stuff.
Right.
I just want to like give that a shout out. Like sometimes people are like, why didn't you talk about protocols? It's like, because this is it. Nichi and I both are very experienced practitioners, and like this is a deep end that we swim in because that's where it's going on. So,
and I gotta just say a little something about protocols that outside of what Cellcore has produced with their foundational and comprehensive protocol, I have not been a protocol fan. I never really have. And even though that protocol works for most people and quite well, it might be like really high in energy, which is, I think, why people have a problem with it sometimes, is it just needs a little more energy and binding support. I guess the reason I say this is because we've never, our practice is not a like, oh, you have thyroid issues, or you think you have thyroid issues, or you're thyroid tested, here's our thyroid protocol. Your protocol is an ever evolving and fine-tuned and tweaked program that's a total biohack. It's completely bio-individualized to you, what you need, period. So also when we can step away from like a cookie cutter, like I'm going to do this thyroid protocol. Well, do you know that your thyroid's connected to like a few other glands and a couple other systems?
Like all
so
of them.
When you think about it, like, so I think it's amazing that people are out there learning and starting to like, I think this is what I need, and going after that. I'm a little biased in the bio individualized department.
100%.
So you can take the Cellcore comprehensive protocol and you can individualize that for someone if they want like a protocol, right? You can have it work for them. We've done that so many times for people. So it was just that I felt like I need to say.
Yeah. And I think that that's sort of a little bit the next wave, the current wave of functional medicine is like being more individual, like educating yourself, like using your intuition, healing your trauma. Because I feel like there was a wave, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago that was like just a kind of masculine, like protocols, like it was still kind of the old medicine.
Yes. Heavy. Yeah, it's heavy. It's hard to get through. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it was a little too top down for me. And I'm not that type of person. So I've had to kind of like when I wrote my mold book, I had to put in some amount of like, these are my favorite techniques, or these
for sure.
I had to organize it somehow. But when I'm with a client, there's a lot going on about, their life circumstance and their energy and their capacity and their budget and like that I consider.
Yep.
I would never shame them for not doing this or that, or not having the money for this. So
hard.
Yeah. So I think that like tapping into some of the things we talked about today, like getting centered, like thinking about the possibilities, it's just it's a stronger way to heal. So
It is, right.
I just appreciate you, and like that you're just still doing the work and spreading, it's a lot, and you're just
Mhm.
keeping at it. So,
Kind of resilient in that department. I'm like,
yeah.
call me crazy, but I get a kick out of it, right?
Yeah, so we'll have Nikki's link below, and like I said, she said, like, whatever questions or things you have, just reach out to her. And Nikki, thank you so much for coming on. I really
Gosh, so
appreciate it.
much fun. Yeah, good to
So
see you
fun.
again. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.